Hello, I'm Tom Dozier, and I'm going to be uh, doing some question and answers on misophonia. Uh, it's just the very scheduled start time right now, so there's very few people here. But let me just say a couple of things about misophonia, about me. I've been researching misophonia for 12 years now and regularly provide treatment for misophonia. Misophonia is a very interesting reflex condition. It's a respondent behavior, reflex behavior. I'm a behaviorist, and so I look at misophonia as a reflex or respondent behavior. Misophonia, there's a lot of variation and a lot of similarities with misophonia. It generally starts in childhood, but as I'll show here with this graphic, misophonia, again, generally starts in the, let's say, 7 to 12 year range by this study of over 1,000 people that we did. But there's also people who develop misophonia in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So it's not tied to a particular age, but most of the people develop misophonia in childhood, and it's generally um, increases in severity over time and persists. So the general view of kind of misophonia on the internet is it's this unknown neurological, psychological disorder where people hear these common sounds, chewing, mouth sounds especially, nose sounds, but it can be any sound and have these really strong emotional reactions. And what we see from our research, this is what people experience. So you hear the trigger and you feel rage and distress, and it feels horrible, and you want to leave the room or tell people to stop. But what our research indicates is that you hear the you hear the sound, and then there is a physical flinch that occurs somewhere in the body. It may not always be muscles, it may be just a tension or tightness in the chest, or like anxiety or pain. Most people, it's muscles. And then that triggers these intense negative reactions. So it appears that misophonia is results from Pavlovian conditioning for the physical reflex and other conditioning for the emotional reflex. So that said, there, if anyone has a question, type in your question in the chat, and I'll open up the chat so that I can see it. But go ahead, or if you want to speak, you can turn on your microphone and speak. And otherwise, I'll just keep talking a little bit about misophonia until we have a question to answer here. So, with this physical reflex component, and I'll just show you an example of a really strong physical reflex. This was my granddaughter Katie when she was 8 years old. And I'm going to make this a very low volume because it's her reaction to hearing two sniffs. So let me share this now properly on the screen, and I'll show this reaction of Katie. I'm looking for the right button on my computer, and I found it finally. And so here is Katie sitting on a stool right behind where I am right now. I'm standing beside her with a recording of a sniff. And let's see, let's make this sniff volume down to be about 10%, 4%. Let's bring it up. So there's a little bit of, you're going to hear a little bit of this. If you're triggered by sniffing and you want to really not risk this, you can plug your ears. But here we go for Katie. That's a strong zap. And if she was sitting by her brother doing homeschool, which she did, and her brother was perpetually sniffing, which he did, then this would be really annoying and upsetting and irritating. And then you get the fighting and the all the kind of crazy stuff that goes on with misophonia that you've all experienced. So most people do not have such a strong, visible reflex when they're triggered. Most people, it's just a little, a little tightening of some part of the body. And if we can take that reflex, and I had shared this the wrong way, so I will share this again the right way. But if we can just get rid of that reflex, it breaks the chain, and the reflex, the misophonia emotions just die way down and can go away. But misophonia is caused by normal human neurology. It's not caused by a defect. You don't have some defect in your upper brain telling you these sounds are going to hurt you, or some neurons shorting out so that they're running back and forth in a improper way. But it really takes over you when you're triggered. It possesses you. And the one thing I'm sure of is it's not alien possession, even though it may feel like it. It's normal human neurology. It's called Pavlovian conditioning, which was discovered 120 years ago by Ivan Pavlov. It's always going on in our life. It's helping us adapt to the world, and this is not very adaptive here. So this, since this reflex is normal neurology, we can't just give you a pill or cut it out, but we do know how to bring it down. And so as it comes down and down and down and down and down, then these um, the misophonia emotions, distress, uh, come down as well. And so this is an important component to understand of misophonia. And we're going to actually be having Misophonia Institute is funding thankfully through donations from people, is funding a research study at the University of North Texas this fall, where they will actually be testing a misophonia treatment based on this fundamental principle of misophonia. So let me stop sharing that and go back and say, okay, so if you have a question about misophonia, please, you can unmute your phone, your microphone, or you can type it into the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep talking about misophonia. So, would love
Hello.
to.
Do you have a
Hey, we've
question?
got it. Okay, go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi. Thank you for having the seminar today. Our 12-year-old daughter, Matea, has had misophonia for about a year,
Okay,
and she's currently in seventh grade. Um, and it's now getting to the point where she's mostly triggered by her family, but also in class with, gum chewing is now allowed in class. But they're just because the other kids need it for other anxiety.
yes,
And there's also small noises like clicking of the mouse,
yeah,
tapping a pen during a test. And we've been working with her teachers to try to change her 504 to be more supportive. But what's happening is it's getting so bad that she's been plugging her ears or wearing AirPods
okay,
for the majority of the class, and she can't hear the teachers anymore. And so we're going to be meeting soon, and we don't know how to recommend to support her when she's in a larger environment with multiple kids, and needing to learn. And wasn't sure, what type of resources are available to kind of help children when we don't, there is the option of homeschooling, but we don't want to go
Basically,
that.
we can't control the environment, so we're trying to figure out what we can do with the school, and if you have any suggestions.
Yeah.
sure, sure. Let me call up here one of my recent um, accommodations, okay? And I'm not sure why it's showing up. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to call up an accommodation, and I want to find one that is for schools, right? Okay. And then I want to get it so that it only shows, I need to make sure it doesn't show anything about the person, okay? So I'm going to, okay, I can't show that because it has their name on top of the banner here. So let me open up a new slide and show this. Okay, so now let's see. Let's see if we can see that. So share the screen, share. Okay, so is this now reasonably visible to everyone? Amanda?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So this is the accommodations that I typically request for a person in school. To allow them to take tests in a quiet, trigger-free space. Again, they may need some background noise to do that. Allow them to use headphones, especially AirPods are wonderful, and an MP3 player or a smartphone. Now, does your daughter have cell phone restrictions at her school? In other words, are the phones locked up for the day or in a little pouch or something? Do you know, Amanda? Okay, I'll keep, go ahead.
Sorry, we had technical difficulties. Yeah, she can use a cell phone in class.
Yes.
Okay, because some schools have you pouch your phone, and if that's the case, you can either turn on the noise and just have the AirPods and use the volume control on the AirPods, or you could get an MP3 player, right? That's a separate device for about $50–$60. Okay, but anyway, the purpose of the noise here is not to block all the triggers. The purpose of the noise is to reduce the severity of the triggers, and noise is much better than music at this. To have a little bit of a rain sound or a wave sound plus rain sounds, there's a great noise app called White Noise Light, Lite, and it has a vertical sound bar icon, and it's by TMSOFT. That's the company. But there's lots of good apps. But you can make mixes of sounds. The pink one, the white noise light, is free. It's got a little ad place to click on each page. But if you don't click on it, ads don't pop up. And so she could have a little bit of noise in her ears, and with the AirPod Pros, right, the ones that's got the little rubber tips on them, right, you can have transparency mode so that all sounds are coming into the ear, plus you've added the noise. Noise is the best friend at reducing triggers. The other accommodations would be, adding noise to the room near the student, allowing them to leave the class without penalty and without permission. They just maybe flip up a little card on their desk and to go to an agreed to place. There are times when kids are doing desk work when they shouldn't be, they're not talking, so they don't need to hear what the teacher's saying. And at that time, it's fine to go ahead and wear something that just blocks the sound, or turn the iPods onto noise canceling mode and turn up the noise. That works very well. They need that, sometimes preferred seating. You can even go as far as having a hearing assisted device where the teacher is wearing a lapel microphone and has a little transmitter, and the student has the headphones on to hear that. That's rarely used. The big ones are accommodations for testing and for using noise in the classroom and being able to leave and come back. So do you have any questions about that?
No, we were just, she's been kind of playing around with that a little bit. She says sometimes, I think the thing that she's having a hard time with, and maybe this is where uh, the teachers have been mostly accommodating. We're just dealing with the fact that during math class, when she has to listen intently to the teacher, she can't because of her surrounding environment. So I don't know if the hearing assisted device is a good option, or she was wearing one AirPod, just trying
Okay,
to you know have try to reduce the intensity of the sound she was getting. So she's been
sure.
trying a bunch of different ways, but it's been a real challenge.
It is. It is a tough challenge. Does she, when has she been using music or noise in her AirPod?
I believe it's music, which I probably would recommend for her to switch over to noise just for distraction.
This this can be night and day difference between music and noise. So, for example, are you familiar? Do you have a noise app for her? Does she have a noise app on her phone?
I don't think she does. I
Okay,
have one, but
so
but I don't think
the
she
blue
does.
one is $1, the pink one is free, and it has
Okay.
an ad at the bottom of each page.
Okay.
It comes up, you put it into a list mode. It says manage, but now you have everything in a list. And so here are the individual sounds. And then let me turn on my musician sound so it'll come through. So, for example, here is, ocean waves crashing. And it's got some variation in it. So, and then here's one that's got some clickiness in it, a lot of clickiness in it. All right, this is rain on a car roof. And if I go over, like another great one is Babbling Brook. Where's Babbling Brook? There's Babbling Brook. Okay. And so you can take and make a mix. So I'm going to go to the mixes tab, and you can create your own mix. So this is one of beach waves, ocean waves, and car rain. And there's some variation in it, and a lot of clickiness in there. And it doesn't distract you as much from the words, and you can adjust that usually to be able to hear the teacher, as well as greatly reduce the misophonia. Audiologists for the last 30 years now, since Marsha Johnson discovered misophonia, have been providing a little ear level sound generator. And unfortunately, these cost like $3,000 or $4,000.
Jeez.
AirPods can do the same thing, but they're drastically cheaper, right? $200. So,
Mhm.
but noise starts to mask and hide the sound of the gum chewing. Now, the other thing is, does your daughter chew gum at school?
Is it over? No,
She
but
should.
someone did tell us. Yeah, that's what I was told, that or chew crunchy snacks. Like we
Yes.
were looking at cereals that she could chew, so
Yeah.
that it kind of fills her head
Yes. Yeah.
versus.
I mean, and the thing about gum chewing is that it's constantly in your mouth, and if you're constantly chewing, where the crunchy snacks, if you're eating them, then when you finish one crunchy and you get ready to reach for the next one, you may be getting triggered during that silent period.
Okay.
So, noise plus gum chewing would be a good thing
Great.
for
Thank
her.
you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No? Okay, so let's go ahead and, again, I'm looking for more questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk more about misophonia. So, the treatment that I provide is called relaxation and counter conditioning therapy, which means understanding the misophonia reflexes, relaxation training, and for a teenager who doesn't have bad anxiety, typically we would go with just the muscles which are bumping her. Counter conditioning is relaxing around triggers is a big deal. Let's see, I've got my phone here. I'm going to read an unsolicited text that I got recently, and I didn't call it up, so I'm going to have to find it right now. But this is someone that I worked with somewhere in the past. And let's see what this is. No. You know, I should have. Okay, it says, hello, this is, give their name. We worked together briefly. I just wanted to say thank you for introducing me to the concept of releasing muscle tension to tolerate sounds. I've been using this on my own, and it's really helping me not have a strong response. Very life-changing stuff that I wish more people knew about. And so let me talk a little bit about the muscle relaxation training. I mean, one thing is just to try to relax because you're getting these triggers, you know, coming into you, and it surprises you, and you're bracing for the next one, and it's the natural thing to do is to tense up. I had a situation. This individual had relatively mild misophonia, but I was on a camp out with the young men at my church, and they were talking about what their different dads all did. And it came around, they said, well, Brother Dozier, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a behaviorist now. You know, I do parent coaching, and I work on this thing called misophonia. Oh, what's misophonia? Well, it's this condition where people hear certain sounds and get really upset. And one of the boys, about maybe 10 guys there, one of them says, oh, yeah, I got that. And another one says, yeah, I can't stand the sound of my sister singing, which I've seen a number of people with sibling singing triggers. And I said, well, you know, guys, if you can relax, what's happening is you're tensing up, and you're strengthening this reaction by tensing up. If you'll just relax, it'll make it better. And about 6 months later, I happened to pass this kid in the hallway at church where there was no one else there. And I said, so say, how's that going with your sister singing? He says, oh, yeah, man, it's much better now. It's not really a problem anymore. Thanks for telling me to relax. So it's not a cure-all, and it's not easy, but relaxing can make a big difference. The other thing that you can do to know about where to relax is you can download the free app that's called Misophonia Reflex Finder. Misophonia Reflex Finder. And it's a purple head app. That really is purple there. And when the app opens up, it comes to a page like this, and then you can hit reflex test, and it opens up a number of different horrible trigger sounds. And so you turn your phone volume up to maximum, and then you use the volume setting here and the duration. And so right now it's set at, I'm going to say at 1%, and I'm going to do one that's a phone ring so that it won't trigger anybody. Where is the phone ringing? Phone ring old. And so now I'm going to play it by hitting the little death symbol button here. And you hear that, and I can go even lower. Okay, or I can go, again, much louder and much longer. So you can, with a very, very small trigger where you, you don't, you can get it short enough and soft enough that it doesn't trigger the person. And then you can raise it up a little bit of a volume. You know, did you hear it? Yes. Did you feel anything? No. Or did it trigger you? No. And then you can raise the volume up. And one of my favorite responses is I say, did that trigger you? And they say, not really. And what that means is they felt something, usually, that they felt something, but they didn't have the emotional explosion. It wasn't a normal misophonia reaction. And so in that in that very small, like on a 0 to 10 scale, how strong was that? Well, maybe it was a 1 or maybe it was a 2. Okay, what did you feel? And they're like, I don't know if I felt anything. I don't know, I can't, I felt something, but I don't know what it was. Well, was it above your waist or below your waist? Was it in your upper body area? And they can usually, well, let's try it again. And most people can identify an area in their body where they feel that first little bump. And with that, if they feel that bump, then relaxing that area during a trigger situation can cause the misophonia to decay. I had a interesting situation a few years back. I had worked with this family. The girl, I think, was about 12. And we had worked a couple of sessions, and she wasn't really engaging in the treatments, and the parents had stopped. They stopped having the sessions. And then I get an email from Dad, can we meet again? Her misophonia is worse, which, again, that often happens, is that misophonia strengthens through normal experience. And we met, and Dad was explaining all the things the daughter was doing around the house, and yelling at people and demanding people to stop, and slamming doors and other things. And I looked at her intake form on the impact of misophonia on her life. And this form asks people to grade on a rate on a 0 to 10 scale how much misophonia interferes with particular areas. So there was family, romance, work, work or school, social life, and individual activities. And she was about the same severity, kind of high, moderate, in both school and at home. And I said, well, how are you doing at school? She goes, oh, well, school's not a problem. I said, well, what did you do? Relax. And she said, well, what else could I do? So at school, she couldn't protest, she couldn't fight it. She relaxed at school, and her misophonia went down. At home, she fought it, she heard the triggers, she responded, stopped that, and her misophonia increased at home. So this concept of relaxing can be very beneficial. There's another, some people have a breath reflex, that they feel it in their chest, and if they hear a trigger where they're intentionally breathing in or breathing out, it reduces the severity of the trigger. And if that's the case, if it reduces the severity of the trigger, if you're breathing in or out, then your brainstem, your autonomic nervous system, which I call your lizard brain, it's zapping your breathing. It's making you breathe or hold your breath, or breathe in, breathe out, or hold your breath. And it may be hitting you more in the chest muscles for breathing or in the diaphragm. Sometimes people feel it in their upper stomach, which is the diaphragm issue. And so just slowly breathing in and slowly breathing out constantly when triggers are occurring can work to counter condition that reflex, if it is a breath reflex. So relaxing and breathing, it's not an instant cure by any stretch of the imagination, but it's better than tensing up and hunkering down and enduring the triggers. What happens from a from a Pavlovian conditioning standpoint, is that the brainstem, the lizard brain, hears a sound, and it looks for the body. What's the body doing? Goes, oh, there's a muscle tensing. Sound. Oh, there's that same muscle tensing. Sound. There's it goes again, and maybe 5 times it sees a pattern, and it says, oh, I see a pattern. I can do that for you. And so then it's now trigger in 200 milliseconds, boom, it hits the muscle. And then your lizard brain is neurotic and insecure. It's simply trying to follow you. And so it goes, did I do the right thing? So it's watching that muscles for about 2 seconds. And if you go, just a little bit tightening it, which is a normal reaction, then it goes, oh, good, I predicted correctly. But if you're a little bit annoyed and irritated, upset, it's the 3rd trigger of the day, whatever, then it's trigger, boom, and it goes, did I do it right? And you go, it goes, ooh, next time I will bump that muscle harder. Okay, so that physical reflex strengthens with normal experience. Now, the emotions of misophonia also strengthen with normal experience. So in 2015, Dr. Sukhbinder Kumar gave a presentation at the Misophonia Association on what would later be published as the brain basis of misophonia. And the great thing about him giving this presentation, he was allowed to give commentary. In the journal that he published in, they simply wanted the neurological imaging results. They didn't want commentary. But what he said is that this area called the anterior insula is an area in the brain, in the cerebrum, that does emotional regulation. And it gets external signals, touch, taste, sight, smell, hearing, and internal signals, muscle tension, body temperature, heart rate, all the different internal signals that go on, pain. And it relays out to this spot behind your eyebrows called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. And the VMPFC, it's an emotion reflex learning structure. So it takes a neutral stimulus, a certain smell, and if it's like the smell of grandma's house where good things are happening, then it's like, oh, I'm at grandma's house, and it feels, you feel good when you get that scent. It may take another smell or the sight of a kid's face who's a bully at school, and you see that stimulus, that face, and you kind of go, oh, that's, and you feel bad. And so it's a learning structure. You don't actually feel from it. Okay, what happens is it relays back to the anterior insula, who then fires down into the amygdala and hippocampus, and you get the boom emotional explosion of misophonia. So it's like there's a sniff. Okay, I hear the sniff, and oh, I also feel that part of the body reacting. What do I do with that? Yep, that's rage, disgust, and then you get that reaction down here. And so the emotions of misophonia are a learned misophonia reflex. And so that's that's interesting to know that this is a process that develops, and the more, because this emotion reflex learning structure, the more negative emotions you have, the more it learns, okay, hit them harder. It's not just annoyance, it's anger. Hit them with anger. It's not just anger, it's rage. Hit them with rage. And a lot of people, most people with misophonia, feel bad that they're getting so upset by these sounds, and they're having such horrible emotions and feelings toward someone that they love. But it's a reflex. It's like sweating. You can't just not sweat. And so, especially for parents, I want you to know that if she feels hatred or rage towards you in that moment, that's not the real person's feelings, the real feelings for that person. It's just a reflex that comes with misophonia. So that's the emotions of misophonia. Again, these are learned reflexes. That is the physical reflex. Here is something from a study that we did where we had 26 people. We had them here. Kate Morrison and I did this. We had them here weak triggers and said, where did you feel something? Right? And these arrows indicate locations where people reported things. They felt it in their lips. That's not a common problem or a common response area. Jaw, that's pretty common. Neck, very common. Shoulders, very common. Chest, very common. Hands and forearm, pretty common. Abdomen, we had upper leg, lower legs, toes curling. It happens. These are reasonable. Sexual responses are not very common, fortunately. And anyone who has a sexual ping from a trigger, they know it. It's very disgusting, and that's their main complaint. There's also some people who have an urge to urinate, kind of a pelvic floor response. So this issue with the misophonia, the initial physical reflex, I call it, is something that I see every day when I work with people. I'm going to drop my video off for a second. I didn't want to take a drink in public there, in case Isabella has would be triggered. Okay, so does anybody have any questions? Please, I'd love to discuss any area of concern that you have. Let me look back. Okay, no questions. Let me share a couple of things that you can do to make your misophonia better. One of the things you can do is try to focus your attention on other stimuli. That when you are, your brain has limited processing power for stimuli. Most of the stimuli that we get into our body is discarded. It never reaches our awareness. So for example, right now, notice the pressure of your body onto whatever you're sitting on. And you can feel that. Notice the feeling of your clothes on your body. You can feel that. But you haven't been noticing that because it hasn't been important. So if you have a limited ability to process, and so if you focus on something, I'm going to focus on this little model car here and look at the details of it. And as I'm noticing the little individual details, which it does have pretty good detail, then I'm not focusing, it's taken away from the triggers. And you can't not focus on triggers. So when you think you're going to not focus on triggers, then as soon as you realize what you're doing, you're back to the triggers again. Okay. So you can't not focus on triggers. But if you can just find something else to focus on and look at the details, count the number of, petals on a flower, name items that you can see. There's a picture of me skiing with my son, and there's a phone and a timer and a microphone and another clock and a glasses cleaner spray. When you're noticing things, then you're doing something that pulls you away from the trigger. So focusing your attention on things, again, is a very good thing to do. The other thing that you can do, again, is try to relax and carry on. And that can be really difficult, but if you can carry on in a situation, relax, focus, carry on, add noise to the world. For Amanda and her daughter and their family, adding noise to each room, a box fan, a 20-inch square, 4 inches thick. They're about $25 now. Maybe they'll go up with the tariffs and things, but anyway, they're a really good noise machine, and you can put cardboard on the back of them so that they don't blow air, or you can let them leave the feet off and push themselves up against a wall, and then they won't blow air. And so it's a 3-speed noise machine. Excellent. It'd be good to have one of those in the eating area, in the kitchen, in the living room. The more general noise you add to the home, the better. The better the person with misophonia will be able to carry on, and the triggers will be much smaller. Okay. Let's see.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please ask.
Okay, I have so many, but I don't want to hog it. So when I was hearing you about the lizard brain concept, and I kind of see this in her, is that more triggers are developing. It first started off with chewing. Now it's becoming not only auditory, but also visual.
Yes.
And now there are certain things like the back of my neck rubbing on my vest is a trigger, like when you hear like a skin touching a
Fabric.
fabric that's sort of noisy. And so what I'm trying to figure out is how to stop the progression of new triggers, because every couple of weeks to a month, another one comes up to the point where it's starting to really reduce, quality of, things that she, is there anything you can do to avoid creation of, more triggers to come down the road?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. First off, the best thing, the most effective, is to add noise to your environment. Add a nice wave sound, rain sound, something. It doesn't take the sound of, something vest rubbing on your neck, or your hand on clothes that makes a little bit of sound. That's not a loud sound, right? So it doesn't take a lot of noise to make that something that's not so noticeable. The other thing that maybe can be a benefit is to understand that relaxing around these sounds is the important thing to do. That if you relax, then it's not as you're not as likely to develop the misophonia trigger. So trying to relax, it's hard, and try to focus your attention on other things. Now, your daughter may have what, I mean, Amanda, are you a common trigger for her in other ways?
What do you ask? I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Are you a common trigger source for your daughter?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
So
I have a feeling that has to do, for instance, it started showing up when she was 12. I feel like some parenting involved in there is, I feel like, I don't know if the triggers are also associated with annoyance, because of
it,
some, yeah.
is your daughter a bit of a perfectionist?
Oh, it depends.
Sometimes.
With art and makeup and decorating, yes.
Okay, so we find that there was a research study that said 97% of the people with misophonia in this study were perfectionists. Okay, so your daughter hears a sound that's not perfect and goes, "Ooh, that's not perfect. That's not right." And so that causes her to develop more triggers there. But probably one of the other things that may be happening is your daughter may be watching you. That children with misophonia are often aware of where that trigger person is in the room, and they're kind of keeping an eye on them in case they make a trigger sound. And when you start watching a person and noticing all of their sounds, then those sounds become triggers, because you hear a sound and you think, that's a little weird. Hey, I heard that. There it goes again. And the lizard brain, for 2 seconds, it notices the sound and then it watches the body. Notices the sound, watches the body for 2 seconds. And if it sees a predictable muscle response within that 2-second window, it says, I can help you. I can do that for you. And then that's a new trigger. So if she's watching you when you're in the room together, what I would ask her to do is to only look at you when you speak to her or she speaks to you. Right? Only when you're interacting should she watch and look at you, because that's what's part of what's developing these new triggers, is it's bringing it to her awareness. And once you notice something, then you've actually learned to pay attention to it. My son and nephew were in the room in the living area of our house many years ago, where we had a wind-up clock, tick tock tick, clock. And my nephew says to my son, "How can you stand that sound?" And my son goes, "What sound?" He goes, "That clock." And my son said after that one time, every time he came into the room, he noticed the clock. Now, I'm not sure it wasn't every time, but it became a noticeable item, and he started noticing it. Now, he didn't develop a trigger to it, but awareness of a particular sound makes a person hear it, notice it, maybe react, and then they develop a trigger. So not tracking you and relaxing when she hears something, to try to generally be relaxed in situations where there might be triggers. Does that adequately answer your question? Do you have a follow-on?
Maybe I can ask a question
Please.
regarding that. So I developed misophonia in my 30s, and I think I know when it happened and why it happened. So I'm wondering, does it make any difference for your patients to find out what caused misophonia in the beginning? Or do you work on that with your clients?
Great question. And the answer is generally no. It's a little bit like a phobia. If you develop a phobia and you know where it started, just knowing where it started doesn't change the phobia generally. So the problem is your lizard brain, as I call it, doesn't pay attention to the thoughts. So it has just learned that that sound in this setting goes with this muscle. And so it just zaps you. The fact that you know where it started, that may help you understand that it's a normal kind of neurological process, and that maybe that motivates you to relax more with those kind of triggers. So that may help. But generally, Isabel, noticing where it started doesn't, it doesn't give us any magic meaning to work with it. At least from my perspective, okay? From what I do.
So for me personally, it helped a lot to at least have a vast explanation of why this happened to me. So giving a rational thought to this reflex helped in my situation. And I thought it might be, especially when you're talking to parents. So because I don't know, maybe Amanda and you ask yourself, why is this happening to our daughter? So in my experience, understanding why things happen improves the situation. But if you have another experience, that's fine for me. It's just curious. I was just curious. Thanks.
So again, Isabel, you made a very good point to know. Let me put it another way: to know that you're not just crazy. To know that you don't have some defect that's taking over your life. I find a lot of people, once I explain the basic learning concept of misophonia, that this is an accidentally acquired reflex. Oh, at least I know what's wrong with me now, right? At least I know kind of why this happened. And because it's due to brain plasticity, there's actually hope that it can decay and go down. So, one of the things I try to not do, I'd be careful about, is I don't want to blame parents if they have a daughter with misophonia. Right?
Never I would do that, but I think parents might blame themselves.
Yes, and what I try to explain is that this is normal. I'm paying attention to something, I'm noticing something, and it's not the way I would do it. Therefore, I tense up because they didn't do it right, and they're breaking a rule or whatever. And so it's really much more in the child with their reaction to normal sounds than it is the parent causing some problem.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to say something really quick, and thank you for
Please.
sharing that information, Isabella, because I actually find that I've developed a little bit as I get older, and I can tell, like you said, certain things when it developed. With our daughter being, what I've noticed is in the research, what I found is a lot of kids around 11 or 12, this starts, and I don't know if I tried to chat with her and saying, hey, when did this start? And I feel like with kids, it's a harder, unless it's something traumatic that happens to them, they really don't know. My daughter's had a lot of traumatic medical things happen, but I'm not sure if that was the beginning of this. So I can see definitely with your experience that I noticed, certain started dating my husband and he used to do certain things that would trigger me. And, I can trace back to that moment and try to calm down about it. I was curious though, have you guys in your studies ever asked people, our daughter, we used a lot of white noise when she was a baby, more so than our older daughter and longer white noise, for when she was sleeping or trying
Yeah.
to have naps. And I kind of wonder if, I'm not saying we did anything wrong with that, but it just scientifically speaking, introducing her to so much white noise so young, is there a potential of this desensitizing, to, are you more susceptible to misophonia if you were introduced to so much white noise at a young age?
Interesting thought, Amanda, but there's no research. Nobody's ever looked at that as far as I've ever heard. Um, I don't know. I interesting thought. My guess would be it's probably not a major contributor, but um, interesting. Now, I think were you on at the start of the call, Amanda, or was a there's only two of you on this call. Were you on at the start of the call?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you saw the chart, the age of onset, right?
Yes, we saw it.
Right, and so that age of onset um, is kind of centered around 10 years, 9 to 10 years old, but it can happen out in the 20s and 30s as well. So it's not. I mean, it really is less specific of it starting in the late childhood, 10 to 12 years or 8 to 12 year range. There's maybe half of the people start at that time, and then half of the people start at other times. So it's not specifically, it's not as consistent and unified as it often is talked about, because there's a lot of variation. And the triggers vary. The triggers vary greatly. One person's trigger was her friend picking at her cuticle with her thumb. No sound, was no sound. It was just picking at the cuticle with her thumb. And that was her first trigger. So they're not even all auditory triggers that develop. Okay. Any other questions before, otherwise I'll wrap this up, but any last question? Okay, well, thank you very, very much.
Actually, I had one quick question.
Please.
We're looking into certain types of treatments to help. There's CBT, there's safe sounds. I've heard of also
Like hypnotherapy.
hypnotherapy.
Yes.
We've tried hypnotherapy. I think she was too young for it. But can you recommend? I've also heard EMDR might be. I don't know what that is exactly, but I heard that it's really actually not. I've heard it's not a good thing to do. So if there's anything you could recommend for certain types of treatments, or certain providers or practitioners or doctors to reach out to, because the ones that we've found, and they either, I don't know, we haven't had really good luck with finding help in this scenario.
Okay, so how old was she when you did the hypnotherapy?
13.
That was old enough.
Okay.
Was it sequent repatterning hypnotherapy?
I'm not sure exactly which type of hypnotherapy. It was done over Zoom, because the provider was not in our location.
Was it a specialist who specialized in misophonia?
He has done this therapy was done from a man named Adam in England who has had a lot of success with misophonia with I don't know if you've heard of him, but his name is Adam Burkhow and he works with Camp Mind Blocks.
Okay,
And he has had really good success with older people, but had
Okay.
said 13 might be too young because of, yeah, so we tried once.
He had good reviews, but he said
Okay.
that 13 might have been a little bit too young for her.
okay. So there's also a hypnotherapy treatment called sequent repatterning hypnotherapy, SEQUENT, sequent repatterning hypnotherapy. You know, I am a misophonia treatment provider, and I know that sequent repatterning hypnotherapy uses the same model of misophonia, that it's the trigger of physical reaction and then the emotions. I use that model. Nate Mitchell in Louisville, Kentucky uses that model. Nate is not readily available. There are a number of sequent repatterning hypnotherapists that are available because of the number of people. And Jolene Jaffe has done a lot of misophonia treatment. I don't know her individual data or her individual reactions. So again, I don't know. There's people who want to teach you to tolerate the trigger, right? They work more on distress tolerance rather than elimination of the reflex. The work that I do works on eliminating the reflexes for misophonia, and there's two reflexes that a person has. One is if they just remember a situation where they were triggered and they go, you know, start reacting. It's kind of almost like a PTSD response because you're not hearing the trigger, you're just remembering that situation. And then the other is the actual reflexes that you have when you're triggered. And so working on those two reflexes to bring them down through happy activities with small bits of either remembering the trigger or hearing the trigger is the work that I do. So
Okay.
I don't have a good
Thank
answer
you.
other than that. Okay, any other question? All right, well, I wish you well, and thank you for joining us. And I'm planning on doing this again next week if I have people who say that they want to ask questions, and we'll discuss misophonia. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much.